Well, welcome everybody to our Erster webinar today. We're very, very excited to have Tom Love with us from PolicyMap. I went to two presentations about PolicyMap at the last CTAA conference. You know, one wasn't enough. It's the one session that I was very, very excited about because as a previous grant administrator, you know, I used to go all over our planning department trying to find all the data points that I needed for grants. And the fact that Tom and his team have come up with a one-stop shop for those, the data points that are so desperately needed when we're trying to communicate our story about the needs that we have. So yes, so Tom, over to you. So thank you so much for being with us.
Okay, great. Thanks, Tracy. I really appreciate it. And thank you, Stacy, for coordinating this webinar as well. It's great to see everybody. So yeah, so I can talk about PolicyMap. Let me just go ahead and share my screen. And I just have a couple slides and then I'll go right into a live demo. So can you still see my screen? Yep, okay, great.
Yes.
All right. And I'm notoriously terrible about not seeing chat. So if anybody has any questions, just feel free to shout out, or if Tracy or Stacy wants to just read off the questions if they appear, that's fine too. So let me just do a quick few slides overview here. So basically we're a nationwide platform. It's all online. You go to our site, which is policymap.com. We are a nationwide GIS, Geographic Information System, data and mapping tool. We pull together as much data as we can get our hands on a nationwide basis. So you'll see that's designed to be very easy to use, whether or not you have a GIS background or no GIS background, to see combinations of data on a map. So cross-sector in terms of things like demographics, housing, education, income levels, and so on. So there's a free public version that's available to anybody. You can go to our site and just click Open Map on the right-hand corner, which I'll show you. And then there's a subscriber version that has more functionality. And the CTAA is actually received funding from the Federal Transit Administration to pay for access for the first 50 organizations to a separate site, which I should have put on the slide here. Basically, it's ncmm.policymap.com for the National Center for Mobility Managers. And I talked with them yesterday, and they have 6 slots remaining. So Tracy or Stacy, if I guess after this call, if you want to send the contact information for CTAA, you know, act fast.
Tom, can I just step in just a second? So just so you know, UTA has been awarded one of those subscriber memberships. And I know they're going to be, it's very competitive, you know, around the nation. We have received one, and so we are very happy to help anyone. We cannot give you the login information, but if there's something that you need, Christy Allen is the contact in my department, and she's happy to help anyone access any of that information that you may need.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, so it's good to know, even if you don't have access, at least you'll see the capabilities of the tool that UTA has access to, where they can generate reports or maps for you. So I just go quickly through this. So all types of organizations use PolicyMap. In this case, you know, transportation planners, mobility managers, but also, you know, other government agencies, real estate, a lot of housing organizations and nonprofits, health agencies as well. And you know, there is the cross sector between health and transportation, of course. So some of that information might be useful for you as well. And so you'll see on the map, you know, why we use this. Basically, it's a lot easier to understand data when you're looking at it on a map versus looking at tables and charts and spreadsheets. So it's easy to overlay, you know, where you're doing work versus where there are certain conditions where, you know, perhaps the areas are being underserved. And so those visuals or those reports make for great statement of need for grant applications. So you'll see in the tool again, all kinds of data. So things like locations of grocery retail sites or healthcare centers or hospitals, along with layer data. So concentrations of, people in certain income levels or certain demographics. We have different quality of life indicators. So households with internet access or without internet access, and workforce statistics. Also areas that are eligible for different federal program tax incentive programs like opportunity zones or community development block grant programs. So our main website is PolicyMap.com, and there are some resources there that might be helpful for you. Actually, under the resources menu, we have a newsletter blog because we're continuously adding new data to the platform. We're always updating existing data sets. So we write highlights about them, and we have use case examples, which I think might help. Different customer stories. There's a very short tutorial video. And we also offer public training twice a week, every week for anybody that's interested. They can register for a free 1-hour public training webinar. So every week we have a basics class and we have an advanced class. And also, if this PowerPoint is shared afterwards, here's a link to our full support website, which has all the different guides and tutorials for all the aspects of the tool. Okay, so let me go into PolicyMap. Okay, so you can see our website is PolicyMap.com. And again, under the resources menu, that's where I point out some of these additional resources, like, for example, our blog. This is where we have, recent data. So we've just updated all of our health data in PolicyMap from the CDC. Things like, housing disparities or internet access for children. All these updates are here in our blog. But what you would do is go ahead and click this Open Map button on the upper right-hand corner to go into PolicyMap. So the first thing you see is this login prompt. So if you do receive a login, this is where you log in for the full access to all the features and data and functionality of the tool. If you don't have a login, you can basically bypass this. You can see where it says non-subscribers can exit this window to access the public version. So you can just X out of this version to go to the public version. But what I'll do is go ahead and log into the tool to show the full functionality. And basically the free version, if I can remember my password, the free version provides access to about 80% of the data in PolicyMap and the ability to view the data on the map. The subscriber version provides more functionality, including ability to download data or generate reports or even upload your own, program site data in the tool. So here in the location bar on the top, I'm just going to type in Utah to zoom to your state. And, you can zoom in all the way to the point where you are seeing building footprints. So I can go all the way down. And you can even change the base map to a satellite view instead of the standard map view. So let me just zoom out a little bit here. And you'll see that the data is organized in these menus across the top in these different categories. There's also boundaries. So if you wanted to overlay different boundaries like zip codes or state legislative district boundaries or congressional districts or census tracts, you can put these different boundaries on the map and they'll show up on the map as overlays. And you can turn the labels on and off of the boundaries. So let me just take the boundaries off. And I'll go through these menus, but first, to just jump right into some functionality, let me just show you how the data layers work. And then after I do that, I'll go in and talk about some of these data categories and what's in the data. So you can either, go through a category and find data this way. So for example, under demographics, you can look at things like people with disabilities. in terms of their age, their income, or their employment status, or things like, veterans by poverty status or by service. So all these menus are organized in a similar fashion, like under income and spending. For example, you can look at people in poverty by age, race, income, veteran status, foreign-born status. So all these menus are organized in a similar fashion. And if you're not sure where to find something, you can just type in a keyword here at the top where it says data. So for example, if I type in vehicle, you can see that when you go down through this list, you can see, let's see here, estimated percent of housing units for which no vehicles are available. So basically households without a vehicle. And when you put the data on the map, you can see that we're looking at a data layer, which is estimated percent of housing units for which no vehicles are available. It says the source of the data, which is coming from the census. It shows when, the year of the census data that it's pulling from, which is the most recent Census American Community Survey data, 2016 through 2020. You can look at the percent of households without a vehicle. So if I zoom in, you can see in the legend that we're looking at census tract level data, which is the default based on my zoom level on the map. But you can change this to look at a zip code as a whole or a city as a whole, or even down to a block group. So if I stay with census tract, and I'm also going to just change the color of the map because this purple kind of gets to me after a while. So when you mouse over the map, you can see, for example, here's an area where almost 13% of households are without a vehicle. Up here, you can see 20% in the census tract, 16% here, and so on. So in these layers, you can also change the cut points on the map, because for the nation, it's maxing out at 12%, but we see higher percentages here. So if you wanted to see the very highest concentration of areas with households without a vehicle, you can just simply change the map cut points. And then, if you only wanted to show the highest levels, you could just click on those parts of the legend and only show those layers. So now here you can see this area here is 25% of households without a vehicle. You can click on the map and see a trend chart. And when you click trends, you can also see how this area compares up to the nation. So this area is a census tract where 25% of households are without a vehicle, which sits within the zip code 84115, where it's 13%. The city of Salt Lake is 10%. The county subdivision and the county is 5%. So you can see that it's a much more apparent issue in this smaller area versus the larger areas in which it sits. So you can click on this trend chart here if you wanted to actually put this into a visual chart to show how this particular census tract is trending over time in terms of this issue. And if you wanted to compare, say, with the county and with the city, you can see that, it's visually for the city and the county, it's much lower. This area, it's much higher, and it's also trending higher over time for this particular indicator. So in these legends, you can change the variable. So you can see we're looking at percent of households without a vehicle. You can actually change this to the actual count or percent change in the past 5 years or since 2000. So if I change it to number, you can see we're now looking at the estimated number of housing units for which no vehicles are available. And again, here's 278, here's 512, here is 615 in this area. So again, you could edit the ranges to see which ones really jump out. And at this point, you can do a couple things. First of all, you can overlay this with point data sets. So in this area, for example, under each of these menus, like under housing, the first options are locations. So under housing, we have public housing sites, low-income housing tax credit locations, HUD multifamily housing sites. So if I put on here public housing, you can see that these little blue diamonds our public housing sites, here's one called Phillips Plaza, which has
wow.
Looking at the main, okay, here we go. It has 169 units, 173 residents, and it has the percentage of residents that are senior as well as disabled, and also the physical inspection scores for the property. So for these point data sets, you can make them easier to see by changing the size, shape, and color of the icons. But if I also put on here HUD, let's say multifamily housing sites, and so these are all additional properties. So you can see that in this area where we know that there's a lot of people out of the car, now when you start overlaying with some of these housing sites, you can see, this site here is another site with another 114 units. And again, with the demographics of the, so this is a senior site, a senior location with 97% of residents are senior headed households in this location. So you can actually, if you wanted to, you could download this data out of PolicyMap as a CSV file. So if you wanted to draw a custom assessment area here and just download all of these site information, you could do that. But we can also, click on the map and you can generate a report. So we have 4 different types of reports in PolicyMap, and you can generate these reports also on custom areas that you create yourself, not just clicking on a census tract like I'm doing here. So this is where people really love, for grant applications, this community profile report. On this area where we've identified a lot of households without cars. And this pulls up and shows the state legislative district and congressional district in which it sits. It has, for this area, which is this particular census tract, the population trends over time. So this area has grown 14% between 2010 and 2020 compared to 15% for the county and 18% for the state. Here's the population breakdown by race or ethnicity. So pretty diverse area. We've got a significant Hispanic population as well. And it compares this to the state level. So for the state, it's 15%, but here it's 20. And then here is your population breakdown by age. So it's the count of people by age group. So the 65 plus, 429 people is 14%, about 15% of the area compared to 11% for the state. Also much higher, 18 to 64 is 82% compared to about 60% for the state. So this area is a kind of an older population compared to the larger areas. Here you have your number of households by income bracket. So, we already know there's a lot of subsidized housing in this area. And also you can see 46% of households in the census tract earn less than $25,000 per year. So 802 households compared to just 12% for the county and 12% for the state. We have, a number of people that are foreign born here, about 14%. And family structure, so how many, families are single with children or married with children. We have, the housing situation. So how many people live in single family homes? So most people here live in small and large apartment buildings, which we kind of gathered already by looking at the map in this area. And then we also have vacant housing units, very, very low, only 31 vacant housing units based on US Postal Service data in this area as of Q2 2021. Some of this data is only at larger geography. So we have monthly unemployment data, which is at the city, county, and state level, very low, 2.1% for Salt Lake City. And also,
I have a quick question.
Mm-hmm.
Can you do the data with the area that you've selected with the state and the national average?
State and national. So I believe the data rolls up. That's a great question. So the data, I believe, is aggregated to the national level. We'll check it when we go back to the map.
Okay.
But yeah, these reports are basically just static templates that you can run on any area.
Okay.
So unfortunately, these PDF reports are not editable, but the other option is that you can download data out of PolicyMap itself as a CSV file. So instead of looking at this report, if you wanted to download like the 65 plus population by census tract for, you know, the entire state or even a certain area,
yeah,
you'd be able to do that as an Excel file.
great. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And then, you know, back here to the end of our report, these are the occupations for people who live in this area. So the largest group are healthcare in this area. And then we also have crime data. This is from the FBI Uniform Crime Reports. Again, this is only at the city and county level. Crime rates by crime type, which was just updated. And then we also have notes at the end of the report about the data sources.
Okay, this is amazing. I'm glad I'm not a consultant because I'd be put out of business. Tom, can you show us somewhere in a rural area, please? So like us rural folks can get a sense of what we could expect for data in like a Bexar County or, you know, somewhere not on the Wasatch Front?
Yeah, I mean, the challenge there, of course, as you probably know, is that data is aggregated to geographies like census tracts and block groups. So in rural areas, those will be much larger areas because the population is, you know, more spread out. But do you want to give me a county or area you'd like to go to?
Someone yell out their rural county. I always bogart the conversation, so somebody else chooses.
Or I can just zoom out.
Duchesne County is a good county that's pretty rural.
Is that
yeah, rural out by Roosevelt and Vernal.
But you're gonna have to spell it because he's not from Utah.
Sounds like Duchesne.
Oh. Yeah,
right?
Duchesne. Yeah, Duchesne is.
That's even worse. So
Duchesney, I think. Oh, right there.
No Y.
There you got it. There you got it. Duchesne. Duchesne County, right there.
Oh, Duchesne. Okay, I only heard Shane because I'm old. So, okay. So yeah, so here, so we still have this number of housing units for which there's no vehicles available. So you can see that if I change this to, let's say block group, which is the smallest geography. So if I put the map boundaries here for block groups, and I need to zoom in a little bit first. Just bear with me here. Oh, come on. Okay, there we go. All right, so now if I zoom out again, so my block group boundaries are not staying on the map. Okay, so let's not worry about that right now, but you can see that we're looking at block group level. And so Duchesne, I think I said it right. If I zoom into Duchesne, you can see, you know, housing units 23 in this area. And, you know, you can still overlay with other data sets. So you can still generate a report on this area, or you can go out to a census tract and generate a report on the census tract. So it's a little challenging. It's a little more challenging just because data is, the geographies are so much larger in rural areas, which is always a challenge with data. So that's kind of one of the issues with rural data.
But I do think this is really promising. I mean, you're working with the same data that we would have to hire someone very expensive to analyze for us. So just the fact that this data is, you know, is within the system, even if it's at the census tract level, I think is very helpful. Thank you for showing us.
Sure. So let me just go back to where we were, kind of over here. So yeah, let's go into some of these menu options. So under income and spending, this is where I'm not sure if you use the actual like low and moderate income thresholds for your type of work. I know in like housing, there's this median family income as a percentage of area median income. I won't go into too much detail if that's a measurement that's not used.
No, we do now, thanks to the state legislature.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
Well, it actually makes sense because, you know, it costs different costs of living across the country in different areas. So for those that are not familiar with low mod, basically there's the overall area median income. So what the average person makes for overall for the metro area. And then they come up with these measurements, 30 to 50% of area median income, 51 to 80, 81 to 120, and so on. So here we're looking at local median family income as the share of area median family income, meaning like in this area here, or maybe over here, like this area here, people that, on average, the people that live in this census tract earn only 63% of what the average person earns overall for your metro area. So that's what low mod is. So when you have, you know, any data set like this, we rate these descriptions. So here in the legend, there's this little I. And so because there's a lot of data in here from about 130 different sources, so we document everything. So we actually do explain the lightest areas on the map are very low income block groups where local income is less than or equal to 30%. Low income is less than or equal to 50%. Moderate income is less than or equal to 80%. Middle is 80 to 120, and 120 or greater is upper income areas. And again, if you only wanted to show the 50 to 80 and the 81 to 120, you can show those areas. So that was a long segue about low mod. We have, you know, poverty information in here. We have anything with a P like this next to it is data that we create a policy map. So here we have consumer spending information. So what percentage of their total income are they spending on things like housing or food? Strangely enough, alcohol is in there, and education. Same thing for medical spending, you know, out-of-pocket expenses for prescriptions or office visits. Here we have location affordability. So getting back to this wonderful AMI that we just talked about, you know, again, this is used a lot in housing agencies. So in an area, what percentage of housing units are affordable for a family of 4 earning 80% of area median income, or 100%? Under the housing menu, locations we looked at already, so things like HUD multifamily housing sites and low-income housing. We do have rural development, so I should have put that on the map when we were in the other area of the state. So we have the USDA rural development multifamily housing locations. Home sale data, so the number of sales in a particular quarter and what's the median sales amount based on different types of housing, and then home value data. So we have things like, you know, affordability and cost burdens, or what percentage of people own versus rent, or what percentage of homeowners actually own a home that's free and clear where their mortgage is paid off, or they still have a mortgage. And all these indicators you can also see broken down further by age or race or other criteria as well. So you can go even further down. So things like affordability and cost burdens. You know, here we're looking at something like renter cost burdens, extremely cost burden renters. So, you know, again, people have to pay more out of rent. That's less money for food. That's less money for transportation. Could be another aspect to look at the communities that you serve. So we're looking at percentage of all renters who are severely cost burdened. And again, when you click on the information icon, these are people that are paying at least half their income each month towards rent. Same thing for home ownership. I'm going to skip over some of these, but you know, just you'll have access to the public version regardless. So under lending, we have all the information about things like historic redlining data. So areas where in the 1930s and 40s, banks were specifically instructed not to lend because they were quote unquote undesirable or declining areas. And then we have current, all the current mortgage data, number of loans, median amount, high cost mortgages, mortgages by race or ethnicity. Quality of life locations. So here, this might be interesting. So we have, of course, grocery retail locations. And this is data that we license from Nielsen. And again, when you have these point data sets, this tool's used a lot for food security and food grants because, at first glance, it appears there's really not an issue with stores, but if you filter this, you can say, I want to filter by grocery retail type and color code these. And now you can see, typically there's a lot of dollar stores or Family Dollar. So they're not really full service stores that have fresh food or produce or meat. So here you can actually see that the full service stores like Smith's here and so on. Smith's must be a chain in your area. And then quality of life, this is where we just added recently this transportation data. So this one we looked at already, the vehicles per household, but we also have public transit. So this is where we have things like distance to the nearest transit stop. And this is from the EPA Smart Location Database. So this is measured in meters. So the darker areas are a further distance from the nearest transit stop.
Can we change that from meters to feet?
No.
Or do we just have to calculate that in
to calculate, yeah, I'm sorry.
That's
yeah.
okay.
Yeah. And this is only available at a block group level. So
Okay.
I actually just stumbled upon this today. I mean, I forgot we had this. So we also have transit trips for, by median income families or moderate income families. And so what we're looking at here is annual transit trips taken by a moderate family income household. And so like here we see on average 218 trips for a moderate income family in this area. And again, what does a moderate income family mean?
That's 218 trips per
annual.
Oh, annually.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah.
That's really helpful.
Yeah. So I'm actually going to jump to multi-layer maps because I definitely want to show this. And again, this is a subscriber feature, but this is where you can combine up to 5 criteria at once. So what we've been in so far is single layer maps, meaning every time you put on a new layer, you replace the previous layer. This is where you can upload up to 5 at once. And so if I zoom out here a little bit, and let's say, and I'll move around, I promise. Let's say we would look at something like under demographics. Let's look at age, population by age. Let's do 65 or older. And so we're looking at areas where between 0 and 100% of population is 65 or older. I'm going to change this from percent to number. And I'm going to say I want to find areas that are at least 500 people per census tract, 65 or older. And so now here you can see what's been shaded are areas where it's 500 or more. So here is 942. This is kind of the same area we've been looking at before. Down here, we've got 505. And again, you can just use this slider to change the map. If you want to go even more aggressive, you can do that. Or if you want to go less.
I'm sorry, I'm asking so many questions, but it's saying that within that area, 500 people are 65 or older.
That's right.
Does that seem right? That there's less than 500 people in those areas within Salt Lake City where people are not 65 or older?
So yeah, I mean, yeah, I can put the
weird.
boundaries on the map for the census tracts. So for each of these areas.
Okay.
Right. So like if I click on this area here that's not shaded, it's 369, which is why it's not shaded, because right now we're looking at 400 or above.
Okay.
But right next door, it's 603.
Got it. Okay.
So you can add to this maybe under, let's go back to our vehicles data set. I'm just going to type vehicles again. Percent of housing units for which no vehicles are available. So let's say for data layer 2, we want to find areas where at least 10%. Oops. And so now here you can see that we've reduced it to these areas where it's both criteria have been met. So this area here has 603, 65 plus in an area where 15% of households, about 16% overall, don't have cars. And again, you can change these. You can either just type in a new number or use the slider, and the map will change to add some more places. So now I've lowered it down to 8%. You see some more areas appear. Let's say we want to look at something like income and spending. Let's look at people in poverty. And let's say areas where maybe poverty rate's 15%. So now you can see we're kind of zeroing in on a few places. I just want to see if there's anything up in Ogden. No. So based on this, you can see a few places here that have met these 3 criteria so far. And again, you can overlay this again with your point data sets. So if you wanted to put on here your housing, you know, these are all the low income housing tax credit locations. You can filter these to show, you know, which ones have more units. You can put on here your public housing sites. And then, you know, you can say, well, let's also add on here, maybe if you're looking at something like transportation to healthcare facilities. Under the health menu, this is where we have hospitals, we have community health centers and lookalikes, drug and alcohol treatment facilities, mental health treatment facilities. So if I put the hospitals on the map, and I'm going to make these larger so they're easier to see. So it looks like you've got a cluster of hospitals, you know, kind of surrounding this area where there's also a lot of people that are over 65, where it's also higher poverty and also fewer people have cars. So, you know, that's interesting, but if there could be like areas that are further out that also meet these conditions that don't have that close proximity, like down here, this one in Mill Creek is a couple blocks away from anything. And this area has 425, 8 people over 65 and so on.
Tom, one of the key data points that we're asked quite frequently now in grants is opportunity zones. Mm-hmm. Is there a way to look those up?
Yes. Yes. So under, let me just go back to single layer maps for now. So here under the federal guidelines menu is where you have all sorts of things. So again, you could just type in the word opportunity zone in the search box if you weren't sure where to find it, but it's also under CDFI, Community Development Financial Institution Fund Programs. So here we have the opportunity zones. And so you could also, you know, in your multi-layer maps, if you wanted to throw this in, well, in addition to all these other things, I also want to see if it sits within a designated opportunity zone. So this is just a yes/no data layer. So the areas that are eligible are in purple. We also have, yeah.
Thank you.
So we also have, you know, under housing, urban development, community development block grant eligible areas. So that's another big one for city housing agencies. So these are eligible block groups for CDBG. And then we also have things like, you know, for banks, Community Reinvestment Act eligible areas. So those are in here as well. All kinds of things in here. We also have one other thing under CDFI. There's also a program. So we were launched out of a nonprofit CDFI ourselves. So CDFIs are nonprofit banks that support affordable housing and healthy food access. Are you still there?
Yes, we're here.
Okay. Somebody just called me on my phone from Utah, so I just got paranoid that I was talking for the last 10 minutes with my mute on or something. So yeah, we also have, new market tax credit eligible areas. So this is showing areas that are eligible for both the new market tax credit and opportunity zone areas. So if you're working with a local community development financial institution that receives new market tax credit funding through Treasury, and the program is within one of these areas, then potentially you could partner with a CDFI for funding.
Hey, Tom, on the areas of persistent poverty, does it go down farther, like besides county? Because it looked like it only did county. And we, like, for instance, we got awarded some funds, but we had to go down to like the census tract, the area code, because we don't, like in the urbanized areas, we don't have a whole county that's persistent poverty.
Yeah, so actually under income and spending, we've got persistent poverty tracks. Now this, it's not been updated in a while. This was a study through Brown University. But basically what this means is it's at least a 20% poverty rate over at least the last 3 decades. And so this is tract level persistent poverty data. And, by the way, for any data source you're looking at here in the legend, you can click on the source link, and this takes you to our data dictionary. And so this will give you more detail about, where the data is coming from, when it was updated. So again, this one's not been updated in a while, but it's still, people use it a lot, so we haven't removed it. We also provide a link out to the original source website and then more of a description of the data here in the data dictionary.
So Tom, that was my other question. How often is the data information within PolicyMap updated, and how is that updated?
Sure. So again, it's 130 different sources. I would say for the most part, the data is updated annually, but it's all on everything's on different update schedules, which is why when you come to the site, you'll usually see like a notification banner pop up on the right that, something's been updated today. A big chunk of the data is the Census American Community Survey data. So if I put on any of these here, you'll see that this is coming from the Census American Community Survey data. So this is updated usually every December. This year was 3 months late because of the pandemic, but usually once it's updated by the census, we have it in PolicyMap within 2 or 3 weeks. So most data, whether it be schools or hospitals or housing, the data is updated annually. We've got a few that are updated quarterly, like home sale data is updated quarterly, vacancies updated quarterly, and then unemployment data is updated monthly. But everything else is annual pretty much. And we monitor all the sources. So when it's available, we update it into PolicyMap.
I have a question about that. So is there anywhere that has a list of when they're updated? Because like for those individual things, because I was just thinking if it's something that's updated annually and it just has like a specific time, if you're using the information for something, it might be more beneficial if it's only a few days away and doesn't muck with another timeline to have far more accurate if it's only like a couple days. So I was just wondering if there's somewhere that if you have a list of when it's updated.
That is so that's the first time anybody's ever asked that, and I think that's a great idea. So I guess the answer right now, unfortunately, is we don't have that, but here on the top, I had to move my Zoom panel, but here's the actual data directory. If you wanted to just look at the full directory. So this has, if you wanted to, for example, jump down to something like health. There we go. There's a delay there. Let me go back up to the top. So this has, it doesn't have here when it was updated. I'll pass that on to the data team though. We used to be able to export this whole thing out as an Excel file. So at least you'd be able to sort by the most recent year, but I don't see that here right now. So let me follow up with that question.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Like I said, it was just a random thing that I was just thinking, if it's updated yearly and it's a week before it's going to be updated, it makes more sense to have the most accurate one when putting it on, especially if there's been if you are pretty sure there's going to be a huge change on there. So
the other thing to keep in mind too with data updates is, like, a lot of the data looks like it's not really current. Like, for example, if I put on here health conditions, let's look at something like diabetes. So, you know, it says 2019, which we just updated this data a few weeks ago. So this is the most current data available from the source. So a lot of times people are not, you know, they're used to like immediate data. There's a lag time in certain data sets in updating. So like schools, I believe, you know, our public school information, we just updated to 2020. The crime data from the FBI, we just updated to 2020. And it's the most recent that's available. So there's a lag time in compiling the data and releasing it from the source.
that makes sense.
So other options here on the right, and again, these are subscriber features. So one is if you wanted to export this map as a PDF or a PNG visual, there's a printer button on the right, and this puts you into an interactive print preview window. So you can zoom in, you can reposition the map or make it portrait or landscape. You can move the legends around. You can have your own comments in the title. You can include the data layer description, and then you can export this as a map visual. So if you're using the free version, you can just use your snipping tool, I guess, or screen print. You can also save any maps you create here in your My Save Work folder. So you can create different project folders, save maps, so you can just go back to that map later without having to recreate it again. And then here on the bottom, we have base map settings. So if you zoom in far enough, and again, these are all subscriber features, but here we have bus routes and bus stops. So you can overlay that on a base map, as well as rail transit lines. So I think that's, if there's any questions or anything, any questions that anybody's trying to answer right now, we've got a few minutes left. Like anybody's working on anything that's really kind of gnawing at them.
So to put this, okay, so I see how you just told us about the folder. And so if I want to put this in a report, I also, though, is that not a download button there up in the left-hand corner? So I guess what I'm asking is, maybe you can demonstrate real quick, like if I wanted to use this map and this report for this area for these things, the demographics I've clicked, this is how we would save it and download it so it could be put in the report.
Yeah, so a couple things here. So one option is, you know, you could generate that report, you know, like I showed you before, or you can even create your own custom area. So let's say that I wanted to kind of combine this area into one area and then generate a report. Up here on the top is custom regions. And so this is where you can either draw on the map, or you can assemble things like census tracts or zip codes, or you can do a distance radius. So just waiting for this to pop up here. I have so many that it always takes a while to do. So that if I create, so if I wanted to either draw or assemble things, I could create my own assessment area here. I can just like click on these different areas and combine them and call this, you know, focus area. And you can make these different colors. And so when you save these custom regions, they're stored in your My Custom Regions, so you can come back to them later, but you can download data. You can actually download the Excel file of the, in this case, diabetes rates in this area, or generate one of those reports on this area. Or if you wanted to actually download data out of PolicyMap as an Excel file and use it for further analysis somewhere else, or pull it into another tool, here on the top is this download button. And so this will ask you, if you have layer data, do you want to download this particular data layer? And then if so, what location? So do you want to download it for the entire state, or do you want to download it for a county, or do you want to download it from even one of those custom regions you've created? And do you want to download it at what level? So in this case, the data is available at a census tract level, or a zip code, or a city or county level. And then once you make these selections, you click download. And it says the file will take 15 minutes, but typically it's pretty fast, and it will also send you an email attachment, Excel file attachment. So in this case, it's going to be a listing of all the census tracts in the state of Utah and the diabetes rates for every census tract. So that's another way of downloading data out of PolicyMap. And then the third option is if you wanted to, create a map visual for like a grant application, would be this print option here, where you're saving the actual visual of the map. Is that, so reports, download, and maps export. Other questions? Have I completely overwhelmed everybody?
It's a lot of data. It's a lot of data.
We try to make it easy, but it is a lot of data. So
when it pulls those maps out, is it easy to show the data like embedded in the map? So I suppose that's where I'm a little unclear. So when you pull it, does it show it like in a PDF? Or, I mean, how does that work?
So you mean when you download it as the Excel file, or?
Right. For just the area, can you manipulate it afterwards to make it look a certain way to add your data points, or does it have the data points already on there, or how does it look when you download it?
Yeah, well, here's the download file for my diabetes rates for the state of Utah. It just popped up in my browser. So this is just an Excel file. So this is no visual, but this is basically, all the census tracts. So you could do every county in Utah and the diabetes rates. So it's basically this table with the first one is the identifying number for the census tract, and here's the percent. The option where you are doing this print, this is basically what you see is what you get. So once you finalize it, you're going to export exactly what you see here. It's a PDF file. So I don't know, unless you have like a full Adobe Acrobat or something, it's just a static PDF for that map. The other option is, if I put on a different data layer, let me just put something else on here. Let's say property tax. So the other option is if you wanted to embed a live interactive map into a website or an e-newsletter, this option down here is called share. And this is basically you're getting the HTML to then put this into a live map on your website. And the way that looks is if you go to our blog, which is what I showed you earlier, let me just go directly to it. So a lot of these articles have some of these embedded maps in them. So here's one, assess hospital quality of care with the hospital compare data set. So when I go into this article, it talks about hospital quality of care and predominant race. And so this is actually an embedded interactive map. So
that's really cool.
Yeah, this is you know, they have locations of hospitals, and they've overlaid it with a predominant race or ethnicity. So here you can see hospitals that are in predominantly African-American locations. You can click on the hospital, you know, and see details about that hospital. Just like, it's basically a mini policy map on your website.
Oh, that's really cool. Thanks, Tom.
Mm-hmm. All right. Still have a few more minutes. I'm looking at my computer clock, which is like 10 minutes off of my wall clock. So I'm going to go with my computer clock. But any other questions about how to access, or Tracy, any thoughts, final thoughts?
I just think this is an incredible tool to help us plan in a much better way, and to justify, you know, when we're asking for funding, or, yeah, I mean, I just think this is an amazing tool for any of us. So we don't have to go digging in the planning department to find the information. So, you know, in the past, they've had special access to certain data sets, and it's just a little bit frustrating. So this is fantastic that it, you know, it's at our fingertips. So I'm very grateful for the information you've given us, and for your team and all their work they've done to make this available to everyone. So thank you so much. This is amazing. And I'm glad NCMM has seen the value of it too, so that they can make it available to folks across the nation. So This is great. Thank you so much for your time and your expertise. I have to do one more shout out to folks for the Erster conference. If anybody hasn't signed up yet, please do. We've extended the hotel rates for one more week, but the rooms are going quickly. So please sign up as soon as you can for the Erster conference. There will be a mobility management all-day workshop that Amy Conrick is coming in for. And there may be another, you know, time for Tom to meet us there as well, so virtually. So thanks so much, Tom, and thanks everybody for joining us. We hope it's been really helpful to all of you. This has been recorded, and we will be rolling out our new website at the Erster conference, and hopefully this will be on there for you to review in the future. So